sword, history's everlasting icon of power. The men who wielded these blades derived their strength not just from their arm, nor the steel of its body, but from the weapon's mere presence. For the sword's commanding legacy was forged in the heat of battle. For thousands of years, the sword changed the course of history. Battles were won, lands were conquered, and destiny was determined not by politics, but on the edge of this legendary weapon. The sword was the ultimate symbol of authority, courage, bonding, valor, and the true essence of romantic chivalry.
The art of fine sword making is a craft that has nearly vanished over the past 100 years. It is an art that was handed down from father to son, or at other times, from master to apprentice. During the Middle Ages and Renaissance periods, there were many key sword-making capitals throughout the known world. However, today, only a few remain. Though many countries still manufacture swords, only a few can claim to produce a true, battle-worthy piece made of the same tempered steel and forged in the traditional ways of the past. One of the last bastions of the fine art of sword-making can be found in the mysterious and beautiful country of India. Though thought of as a romantic and peaceful country, India's rich past was steeped with many decisive battles, incorporating some of the world's finest advances in warfare. Even till today, many of the ancient war techniques and hand-to-hand combat skills are practiced by the many dedicated students who perform katka and the countless other forms of these deadly Indian martial arts. Thousands of years ago, the first swords were made of copper, and then later bronze, which were the most common metals available at that time. However, the inherent softness of these metals made the edge dull very quickly, sending man in search of improvements. However, with the discovery of iron, a new age was born. It was found that with just a small amount of carbon, the properties of steel changed immensely. The result was carbon steel, a perfect combination of workability and function. Our quest for the perfect sword will take us to the fertile valley city of Dehradun, which is nestled at the foothills of the famous Himalayan mountains. It is here, at the facilities of Windlass Steelcrafts, that old world craftsmanship comes together with modern technology. All the swords which are made by Windlass are forged and not done by the stock removal method. This gives the blade increased flexibility and the ability to finely tune it to perfection. Only the best 1060 to 1095 steel is chosen by the master craftsmen at Windlass for sword making. The last two digits denote the carbon content, which is important in the forging of a blade. The steel is heated on a charcoal fire, which not only maintains the carbon content, but brings the steel to a malleable state. It is then hammered into the basic sword shape, one section at a time, evenly working the entire blade. The final shape of the blade is forged by the mastersmith, who also examines it for evenness. The next step is to take the forged blade and refine it. This is done through a series of grinding belts. A fine skill is required so not to overheat the blade and thus destroying the work of the mastersmith. The blade is now ready for two of the most important steps, the hardening and the tempering. Ideally, the blade should be hard enough to hold a good edge, but not too hard, for that would make the blade brittle. Even the finest steel will perform poorly if the tempering is not correct. Next, the blades are straightened and then put into the hardening furnace. The temperature is brought to between 850 to 900 degrees centigrade, and then the blades are quenched in oil. This quenching creates a reaction, which makes the blade become very hard. Finally, the blades go into the tempering oven, which relieves the stress put on the steel, relaxing the grain structure of the metal. These ovens warm the steel to around 350 to 400 degrees centigrade. The smiths now have a 10 to 15 minute window to re-examine the blade and to do any straightening, correcting any slight warping due to the tempering process. After each and every step, quality control personnel at Windlass Steelcrafts check and ensure that each blade has received the proper attention at every process along the way. We are often asked about the Rockwell hardness of our blades. This is the international scale, which is used to measure steel's use for tools. Many of our blades measure 48 and 52 on the Rockwell scale. However, flexibility and function are still the most important factors. All of the blades are checked to see that they flex to over 5 inches and return to true each and every time. Only the finest blades can pass this test. Exactly like the blacksmiths of old, every blade now goes through a slap test. The striking of all 4 sides of the blade strongly against a hardened tree stump exerts an enormous amount of stress on both the blade and its tang. This simple test proves to the technicians at Windlass the blade's battleworthiness and its reliability to withstand any endurance. Finally, the blades are now brought to the polishing department, where they are given their final stunning appearance. All of the Windlass blades have a full tang. This is the most important part of the blade, since it gives maximum strength to the highest stress area of the sword. Proper care is given not to harden the end of the tangs, so they may be peened or threaded for the final assembly. All of the fittings of the sword, such as the pommel and the crossguard, are all hand cast and cleaned, using both old world and modern methods. Once all the parts are finished, the sword is fully assembled. Each sword is inspected one last time to ensure that the fit and the finish are of the highest quality. Since all of our swords are forged, any of them can be sharpened. Whether you are the owner of one of our historical reproductions or a unique presentation sword for corporate or stately affairs, you can be certain that every blade manufactured by Windlass is a true, one-of-a-kind, handmade collectible treasure which you will be proud to own for years to come. A warrior is only as good as the strength and edge of his blade. All swords were weapons of war and were designed for 2 basic movements, the cut and the thrust. It is a common myth that swords were heavy, cumbersome weapons used only by towering knights. A fine European blade properly sharpened can pass even the most rigid of cutting tests. It is a misconception that only Asian katanas can achieve a deadly and effective cut. Medieval swords were light, agile fighting weapons, capable of delivering dismembering cuts or cleaving deep cavities into a body. Even though most single-handed swords weighed less than 3 pounds, the devastating effect was just as deadly. A good sword is well balanced and feels good in your hand. Though rigid, a sword must possess the ability to be flexible and resilient and snap back to true. This is what is necessary in order for it to perform a seamless cut. A sword was able to cut through a normal wooden shield. The chopping power of a good blade was only limited to the arm that wielded it. A standard half-inch thick shield could eventually be chopped down to splinters. However, during a battle, a warrior would also have to be careful not to get his blade stuck, thus risking the chance of losing his sword. A wooden 2x4 is our target to demonstrate the tremendous chopping ability of the sword. Even this seasoned lumber is no match for a sharpened blade and a good arm. Other than some minor scratches to the blade surface, the cutting edge remains firm and sharp. This same cutting and chopping was never more effective and deadly, especially when coming directly in contact with an unprotected warrior. The trunk of this small pine tree represents the similar thickness of an adult's femur bone, which is found in the upper thigh region of the leg. With one swift, unyielding slice, the tree is brought down, much like a foot soldier in battle. This type of cut was quite deadly, especially on an ancient battlefield with no medical aid. Many recent unearthed mass grave sites of medieval battles show that the soldiers that died in these battles suffered devastating injuries similar to this from a variety of weapons. For even steel mail, the state-of-the-art armor for over 1,000 years, fell victim to the might of the sword. The sharpened blade would not only cut the links of the protective mail, but subsequently also inflict similar injuries to its wearer. Not until the invention of full-plate armor did a warrior stand a better chance of surviving a cutting blow.
Every time you hold your sword in your hand, it is like holding a piece of history. The clash of arms, the glory, the chivalry, the romance will all live again when you grip your sword. A sword that was forged in the heat of battle.